Welcome, everybody. Nice to be here with you all. I have some good news. I have a retreat on the books for June 25, 26, 27. There's details on the website for signing up for that. Many people have still been speaking to me about the last retreat, about how powerful it was and how touched they were by it and how they felt carried by grace. Some, you know, uh, weeks afterward. And so I encourage you, if you feel called to join us, it's really a wonderful time to step into something much, much greater than our ordinary, everyday existence. And so I look forward to having you all join on that. The other night, my wife has really been asking me to take her out, and we never go out. We just don't. I'll go hiking and climbing and go out in nature any day of the week, but we never go out on a date. But she kept asking me, and a friend of hers is single, and a friend of mine is single, and she tried to get the two of them together. And so I said, okay, what the heck, I'll go out and let her play the matchmaker game. And she was just so excited, and and she kept looking at me, and she said, you don't seem excited. And I was like, I didn't want to say didn't want to say anything, but I just bit my tongue. And we went out to dinner, and I saw that it was Friday night, and a lot of people were getting dressed up and going out. And this was the highlight of their week. And when you go out, in theory, you're connecting with friends and just cutting loose a little bit, letting go of the steam of the work week and this and that. But for me, I was just sitting there thinking, oh, I already do that. I already do that just in my own presence. So, the spiritual path that we are on, it's about stepping into a new world, a world beyond the realm of samsara. And so we don't want to wait till Friday night to, blow off steam. In theory, we want to be connected to the depth of our true nature, which is vast and spacious and free. And so every breath, we're breathing in and breathing out freedom. We don't have to wait till Friday night and to experience this freedom or this relief or whatever it is, this excitement. On this spiritual path, we experience excitement through opening to grace, through opening to new realms of being. And I hate to say it, that when I was out, Friday night, I thought, gosh, there's got to be more to life than this, than just going out and getting the meal at a restaurant and getting dressed up. Like, this cannot be the highlight of our week. This cannot be it. Let the highlight of our week be every moment that we're opening to grace, every moment we're opening to God, every moment where we are opening to true nature, where we are falling more and more deeply in love with our true nature, with our true nature. Of course, it can be a beautiful thing to fall in love with another human being. But, human beings, they grow old, they get sick, they die, they let you down. There's a whole different life that's available to us when we fall in love with the truth, when we fall in love with the beauty and the goodness of our own hearts, when we fall in love with God who can actually satisfy us. You know, a lover can temporarily satisfy you. But can you have a love affair with God and experience eternal communion with something much, much greater? And so anyways, one of the things that I was reminded of this week, while meeting with many people, is that most individuals do not know how to take refuge. They don't know how to take refuge within the depth of their being. And so the nature of the mind, the true mind, is vast, is spacious, is free. So it's free of concepts. It's free of fabrications. It's free of fear. It's free of desire. They're free of clinging. And all of this have this mind. All of us have this mind. If we just step back and just look, not at the contents of the mind, but what the mind is, the Buddha mind, we begin to notice it's just like the sky. And so I'm going to invite you all now, if you haven't already, just close your eyes and join me in just stepping backwards, out of all the concepts and all the definitions of who you think you are. Step back out of the personality and simply step into the spacious nature of the mind. You don't have to create this space, it's already here. So this space allows every thought, every emotion, every feeling, every fabrication. And so if you join me just in stepping back into this and noticing, what is this mind like? What's it like? Can you begin to connect directly with the empty nature of mind, the spacious nature of mind, the vastness of it? And I encourage you just to melt a little bit more fully. I can notice that some of you are overly concentrating on how to get there. And so I'm going to invite you just to step back, back, back. And just noticing that your mind is so open, so spacious, that it's utterly receptive. Like you don't have to try to hear the sound of my voice. But your true mind, it's utterly receptive. This is what awareness is. Awareness receives all. Whether it's the wind or the sun or the sound of the rain, the sound of my voice, the dog barking in a distance. I'm going to invite you to notice that this receptivity is so free. That it doesn't fight, it doesn't judge, it doesn't attack. It's already awake, it's already aware, and it's already free. And within this space of freedom, there might be a character named Barb or Tom or Chad or David or Danny. And nothing wrong with that character. We're not trying to get rid of that character. But I'm inviting you to acknowledge that what you are, primordially, essentially, what you are, Marianne, is vast, spacious, and fundamentally free. And I'm going to invite everyone just to smile at that recognition that what I am is already awake, already vast, already free. And to give yourself permission is to take another couple deep, full breaths, stepping back just into this quality of receptivity, this quality of listening. And just noticing what that feels like. Like the listener doesn't grasp, doesn't cling, doesn't fight. But rather simply receives from a place of perfect equanimity. For some of us, this quality of listening, it is the very nature of awareness. It's so subtle, so gentle, so tender, so quiet. Most of us miss this. Most of us miss this. So again, I'm going to invite you just to acknowledge, to admit that there is something pure and empty, non-judgmental, non-fabricated, primordial about your nature right here, right now. Just absolutely perfect. Absolutely complete. Just as you are. And so I'm going to invite you just to continue to rest here. And we'll see what's on everyone's mind today. You know, if you have a question, you can bring it forward. But I'm going to encourage you just to stay in this state of receptivity. And just notice what life feels like. Just to be this openness, this emptiness, this quiet, receptive luminosity. What is that like? And I encourage you just to contemplate, well, what would it be like to live from this place? You know, I was with my little girl today, and in her egoic personality, one of the ways her egoic personality shows up is that she's a fighter. Like she could just fight with you about anything. And I'm not, I'm not a fighter. My wife, she's not a fighter either. And it's just a funny way to live, to fight with life. to struggle against. And I see my little girl sometimes, she is just such a sweet, open-hearted presence. But as soon as her little ego gets on something, she just fights. And, she might be a lawyer when she grows up. She's so good at arguing. But I was just watching the quality of her egoic mind, not her true mind. Again, her true mind is innocent and gentle and tender. And, in her true mind, well, I'll just tell a funny story. So I picked her up today from a friend's house. And I was driving her home. And I was listening to a Dharma talk. She said, "Daddy, I don't want to hear this. I want to hear music," And I was like, well, I wasn't in the mood for music. And she just fought with me and, giving me a hard time for most of the ride home. Then we pulled into the neighborhood. I said, "Sweetie, do you want to come sit up front with Daddy?" And, she said okay, and she just kind of jumped up and sat on the center console. And I said, "Would you like to drive the car?" She's 7. And, she said no, so she gave me some fight. But then she took a deep breath. And she said, yes, I do, Daddy. And she just kind of crawled into my lap. And so I let her, steer the car. And so she sat there just for a couple minutes, and we're driving. I'm in charge of the gas and the brakes, and she's in charge of the steering wheel. And I feel her heart, and I feel my heart. And she just starts to melt out of her egoic personality. And she says, "Daddy, I love you. I love you so much." It's like, gosh, this is such a change. This is such a change, from, our egos tend to just fight so unnecessarily in life. They tend to argue. They tend to, uphold and guard and, have a desire of this and that, and want our way. But I tell you what, when we give ourselves permission just to step out of the ego, it's very much like what happened with my daughter. The first thing she does, she gets real quiet. And then she'll just say, "Daddy, I love you so much." Because she's letting her guard down. She's giving herself permission just to be held and loved. Go for a car ride with Daddy. And steer the ship. Steer the ship, just feeling safe and loved and supported. And see, this is, for me, this is the path of Tantra. So we're not, just simply trying to transcend the ego. Sometimes that works. Like we did in the beginning, we just step out of it. But other times, if our ego is really fighting, we need to be embraced. We need to be held. And as the ego is fully held, oftentimes it can quickly melt. And we can step into the direct experience of true nature, the experience of Dzogchen, where we just see life directly, without any fight, without any struggle, without any attachment or neediness or clinging. So anyways, thought I'd just share a little story. And so, okay, there's a number of people have questions. Let's see what Justina has to say. Justina, are you here?
Yeah, I'm here.
Hi, Justina. It's good to see you.
Good to see you too, Craig.
Yeah.
I have a heart-centered question. I feel I've done a lot of work on self-love and connecting with my heart.
Yeah.
and I I um I still really struggle to like feel like totally rooted in love within myself. And there's still like this tendency to like try to go outwards to get love. And there's like a little voice that always says like, but I think it'll be better if we get it out there instead. I'm not, and like there's not like it can't find enough fulfillment inside, you know.
Yeah.
uh, and and then and sometimes I like notice that like it's like my heart opens more when like there's like the right pieces in the environment that like make it feel like it can open, and then closes when it's like, oh no, like
Yeah.
something bad could happen, all this stuff and loss and all these things. um and yeah, I guess I'm just trying to like find like a deeper rootedness in that love inside of myself, and it's challenging.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You said a lot there, and so I could probably offer two things. You know, if we feel lacking in love in our own heart from, you know, it's like us loving us. If we're feeling any deficiency there, we can practice in two different ways. You know, one is to do a practice that awakens the heart, you know, such as chanting, such as asana yoga, bhakti yoga, um, or even, you know, I'll say something silly, but like, you know, eye gazing, but you looking in a mirror at you, where you're falling in love with your divinity, you're seeing your divinity. So you're bringing awareness down into the heart, and then you're looking directly into the mirror at your own self and seeing your beauty, seeing your radiance, seeing your goodness. And so, you know, we can do any kind of practice to, in a sense, just to kind of jumpstart the heart, singing, chanting, um, you know, receiving, you know, just like some loving mantras that you are saying to yourself. So these types of things can jumpstart the heart. Or just meditating on the heart, meditating on the goodness and the radiance and the beauty that you are. And the second way is meditating, in a sense, in hell. And by hell, I mean all the places you avoid within yourself. So you go searching out for the places that are anxious, that are tight, that are tense. You feel into your shadow. You feel into the inner child and just ask her, you know, what do you need? How can I love you more fully? And for many of us, or most of us, I'll say this, we lack love because, let me see how I can say this in a way that makes sense. The love that we lack is actually stuck in our shadow or our wounded aspects of self. But through embracing the shadow, you liberate the love. And that's what Tantra is when you embrace the shadow, when you embrace the darkness, when you embrace the places that scare you. So if you have an inner alcoholic, critic, if you have self-hatred, if you have a rebellious teenager, if you have an addict, if you have a, you know, a stoner or whatever it is within you, and if you ignore that aspect of self, you will be lacking a massive amount of love. But if you embrace the inner addict, if you embrace the one who has rage issues, if you embrace the self-hatred, it's through embracing self-hatred that you discover literally a gold mine of love, an immense reservoir of love. And this is one of the things that I discovered early on when I was going to therapy or just meeting with my teacher was that basically he would point out all the places, that scared me, all the places I wanted to avoid. And through facing those places and just simply breathing into them and being with those places, what happened is my compassion grew tenfold, my love grew tenfold, because it was like the love that I had, it was buried deep within the shadow, and I had no access to it. But as soon as I began to liberate the shadow, all of a sudden I had an immense amount of love, an immense amount of love. And so it's a funny thing that the more you love yourself, the more easy it is to love everyone and everything on planet Earth. And I can say this, I just want to use this as an example, but my first wife, she used to often call me a narcissist. And she would say, all you do is you want to go on meditation retreats. It's all about you and this and that. And you're always meditating. You're always spending time alone. And I'm like, well, that's not what a narcissist is. That's what, a spiritual person is, who's like, I was just deeply focused on my own path. Like, that's what my life was about, is me realizing the truth within me. And all my time was spent serving my teacher, and so it wasn't a good, I wasn't a good example of a narcissist. But in a sense, there was a little bit of truth to what she was saying, is that the spiritual path can be a little bit narcissistic, and it can be helpful to be selfish in the sense that you're dedicating your life to your own healing, to your own awakening. And the hilarious thing about it is when you dedicate your life to your own healing and your own awakening, eventually, and God, as you wake up, then God just uses you, as a healer for others and as a servant to others. And so it's not a path of narcissism where you get to, it's all about you getting rich and, I don't know what a narcissist wants, but, getting acclaim and fame and all that kind of stuff. As you serve yourself fully, eventually you just end up serving others. And so what I'm getting at here is oftentimes in our culture, we have this idea that, that we are not allowed, we're not allowed to be selfish. And then oftentimes egoically that translates to, I'm not allowed to do anything for myself. And so, we dedicate our life to our career, to making money, or, doing whatever we do in a career, to being a consumer. But instead of this, like, what would happen? Like, the greatest act of love we can do is to love ourselves fully and completely. And as you do so, you become a better father, mother, sister, brother, better partner. You become a healer for this planet. And so I encourage you to be radically selfish in the name of love, and to spend your time just like looking and saying, like, where are the places inside that I'm avoiding? And can I love her fully and completely? And there's this switch that happens, is the more you love yourself, then the less needy you become with others. It's like, I don't really need anyone. Like, when you love yourself fully, you realize, I don't need anyone. Now, I will say this, that there's nothing wrong with relationship. In fact, human beings we're mammals. So that means we are relational creatures. So we are meant to be in relationship. And, that's a good, healthy thing. The same way, like if I look out my front yard right now, there's cows out there, and they like to hang out together. Like, there's not just going to be one cow standing by themselves. They hang out together. They like each other's company. Horses, I live out here, the edge of the desert, and we have wild horses just like packs of horses. And again, it's, the horses, they like to stay together and live in a little tribe. And that's a beautiful thing. And so we can still be in relationship and desire to be in relationship. But can we do that from a place of completeness? It's like, I love connecting with all of you, but I certainly don't need any of you. And don't take that personally, anyone. I love connecting with you, but I don't need you. Now, if I had a big fat shadow and there was a lot of places within myself that I did not know, that I didn't love, that I ignored or avoided, there's a good chance I would need you. And I would be counting how many likes I get on Facebook or Instagram or whatever. And, again, that's a terrible way to live. But a different way to live, instead of counting external likes, is with each breath, can you like yourself? Can you love yourself? Can you soften into yourself? Can you include all the places that you've avoided? And can you love her? Can you love them? And can you train your psyche, your inner child, your egoic nature, your personality? Can you just shower it with love? Say, I see you, I love you, I care about you deeply and fully. And there's a beautiful thing that happens with the ego. The more you love the ego, the more it relaxes and matures and melts into true nature. The more you avoid your ego and attack it or fight with it or judge it or dismiss it, the more needy it becomes. The more needy it becomes. And so if we're reaching outward for another, it simply means there's something within us that feels like she's lacking love. So it's a good question of, what is that place within me that feels alone in the world? And can I connect with her? And can I invite God into that place? And can I step into that place of the inner child and call forth God and invite God fully into the self? Fully into the self. Because when you're flooded with grace and you know your own Buddha nature, there's very little need for another. But there is a love, there's a love that wants to connect with others. But again, it does so without need. And so you feel into that, Justina. What are the places inside that are lacking? And can you look at them? Can you hold her? Can you love her? Can you be sweet with her? Can you see how beautiful she is? And if she feels unworthy or sad or hurt, can you hold her and embrace her and invite her home to the heart? To the heart. So anyways, I hope there was something helpful for you, Justina. Yeah, good to see you. Good to see you. And a fun question you might play with, Justina, is, do you know how beautiful you are? Do you know? I expect to see a smile when you ask that question. There you go. Do you know how beautiful you are? So you're feeling into your beauty, your radiance, your divinity. For some people, they look so serious, or they're like, am I allowed to say that I'm beautiful? It's like, yes, you're a child of God. You are beautiful. And so if the question, like, do you know how beautiful you are, makes you uncomfortable, I'll say this with a smile, it means you have a problem. And the problem is you need to get to know your radiance. You need to get to know your divinity. Do you know how beautiful you are? How beautiful you are. So can you feel into that? And I can tell you, I'm a pretty rough looking guy. And, sometimes I'll look in the mirror and my hair will be, sticking up this way. And, I'll be tired and, be cranky or whatever. But I'll just look in the mirror and I smile. I smile at the radiance that's coming forward because I know what's there, what's looking back is beautiful. I feel it, I experience it. And to be able to see one's beauty is such a gift. Beauty is one of the realms of divinity. It's one of the ways God shines. And so, anyways, thanks, Justina. Good to see you today. Yeah. Okay. How about Tom? Tom, are you here?
Hi, yeah. Can you hear me?
I can. Good to see you, Tom.
Yeah, good to see you too. Thank you for that. And thank you, Justina, for that question. That was amazing. In the spirit of that, I would like to bring forward an aspect of shadow and just sort of say, I always know that that's happening because my heart rate will go up.
Yeah.
And just to embrace that as I do bring it forward in that spirit. It's really about maybe being annoying. So I did my own little private retreat recently. And I remember afterwards, I sort of had a lot of opening and I immediately felt this, I had a couple of friends over and I felt this need to kind of share or teach in a way. And one of my friends, he's a very like good spirited guy. And he said, he's like, oh yeah, like yesterday I just had like a seminar on Tom's life, but I forgot to bring my notebook. And the question is really about kind of oversharing or over teaching or really giving people maybe more than they're ready for, but also in my own self, a sort of need to teach. I mean, ideally, I'd love to be, when someone asks a question, to be comfortable just to share what your experience has been. But sometimes I find myself like giving when it's not necessarily requested.
Yeah.
Particularly because my sort of growth has been so just rapid that the people around me are like, what the hell's going on with Tom?
Yeah.
And so there's an insecurity underneath it, and it kind of, there's sort of like an arrogance mixed with an insecurity there about it. And I guess the essence of the question is like, how can we just step back and like let God be the teacher and stop being the teacher ourselves?
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
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 So, okay, so a couple things. One is, I always like to look at, well, what is like if our ego is acting out, we ask, well, what's the need here? What's the need? And so a moment ago, I was speaking about my little girl, and oftentimes my little girl, she fights with me. Like she fights so much with her dad. And if I stop and look at like, what is she really wanting? She's wanting to connect with her daddy. And her ego just doesn't know how. And so she does, like she's an Aries, so she does the ram. She just rams into her dad. Is how she tries to connect with me. And, from one perspective, it's just, if we were good Buddhists, we'd say that's unskillful behavior. And, so I like to look, well, what's the need in, the teaching part? Like, Tom saying, like, sometimes I just tend to overshare. So with sharing, oftentimes it's like, well, I like to share because I'm connecting with another in a spirit of divinity. Now, if we are good Christians, we call this fellowship. And, it's like I was a part of a Christian men's group this last year before COVID. And, we used to get together, and there's a bunch of, there's a men's group, and basically all the guys in the group, we came together and we shared. We shared our experience around the teachings, and we had experience of communion, experience of connection, and the experience of, basically having the talking stick, basically like having the microphone saying like, hey, this is what's going on in my life. And so you're seen as a divine human being, as a divine being, as someone who's brilliant, who's learning, who's growing, who's extraordinary. And this is something quite incredible. It's something quite incredible. It's a gift that my teacher gave me on day one as I walked, onto his land. And I've told this story many times. I was a total wreck. I looked like a punk, and I had dreadlocks and this bleach blonde hair, but he saw me as God, and he respected me, and he took me seriously. And so he fulfilled this need that, I don't know if anyone before saw me in that way. Like when you first fall in love, sometimes your girlfriend, boyfriend, partner, whatever, they see you as divine, and that it feels incredible. But then that fades, and then on the day we're born, oftentimes we're seen as this being of light. But like the whole thing of like wanting to be a star, and getting to share your gift in a microphone, like Katy Perry or whoever the pop singers are, Taylor Swift. It's like, I'm a star, and everyone's looking at me. So human beings have this need to be seen. But there's a truth. There's a truth behind the egoic need, the insecure egoic need. The truth is, Tom is a star. The truth is, Tom is this bright light. And I think what your ego is saying is like, I want to be seen as a bright light. I want to be acknowledged for who and what I am. And so then we take on a role, a role as being the one who knows, the teacher, whatever it is. And, well, of course, when we do that, especially with our friends, they'll get sick of us real quick. Like one thing I'm happy I've never really done is I've never been a teacher to my, like my close friends here in my communities. It's like, I don't teach anything. I don't mention that I'm a teacher. I don't say anything. I completely deny it, unless they come to me. And occasionally they come to me when they're having a bad day. Say, Craig, what do you think? And so again, this goes back to what I was saying with Justina. Tom, when you see yourself, when you see your divinity, and I'll say this, when you listen to your truth, the depth of truth within you, which is opposite of doubt. And so sometimes, we all have a doubting mind, a mind that goes, is it this? Is it that? Is it this? Is it that? I'm thinking about this. I'm thinking about that. But putting down, all the perspectives, because any kind of, where you're trying to think something through, and if you just go deep into your belly and you discover the truth in you directly, and you know it and you honor it, and you allow the truth to flourish within your own self, then you don't need to be the teacher with your friends. Does that make sense? Like when you, so oftentimes we struggle with doubt. And so then we kind of do like a compensation dance where we, act like we're the one who knows, and then we become the teacher to our friends. And, it's this whole like little kind of egoic, dance. But instead of going up and out, into an egoic compensation type of role, if you go down and into, and you discover the truth within yourself. There's a funny thing that happens is when you discover your truth in you and as you, there's a great silent confidence that gives birth. And you don't need to say anything to anyone. There's like a naturalness there where you just are yourself, where you're radiating light, and you don't care if anyone sees it or not. Like, you don't care. Like, you don't care. Like, this morning I woke up and on my phone, it gives me notifications anytime someone comments on my videos. Like, it's probably a way to turn it off, but I probably clicked the wrong button. But, you know, I wake up these comments, and, you know, I had some fundamentalist Christians attacking me this morning. You know, saying Craig Holiday, he's a false spiritual teacher, some kind of thing. Jesus Christ is the one and only Lord and our Savior. And I like to mess with people when they comment to me like that, especially fundamentalists. You know, I'll comment right back, like, you're right, praise Jesus, Jesus is the way, or, you know, or I'll just try to tell them something to really confuse them, where I won't fight with them. I'll say, oh yeah, I love Jesus so much. I was going to be a priest and a monk in the Christian tradition, you know, just to throw them a curveball. But I don't get disturbed by them in any way when I get nasty comments, because I know what I am in the depth of my belly, in the depth of my heart. And so, you know, I don't need anyone to see me. I don't need anyone to know that I'm a spiritual teacher. In fact, I actually like to be quite anonymous. My wife's always telling people in our little town that, you know, Craig's a spiritual teacher. I'm like, no, don't tell him. Don't tell him. Don't tell him. Just say Craig, you know, say he works a hammer or something. Just say he's a carpenter. Just like, I don't want to talk, you know, I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to be anybody, you know, to your friends. You know, I just want to be, you know, an average Joe who's having an extraordinary experience inside. And so, you know, again, uh, you know, with Justina's question, with Tom's question, is pointing out a deficiency the ego has. And every ego has a deficiency. So don't, Tom, take that personally, or Justina, don't take it personally. The nature of the ego is deficient. Because the ego, it knows, like, when it really looks, oh, there's nothing solid here. There's nothing permanent here. And so anytime the ego acts out and starts to compensate, it's pointing out a deficiency. And so to look at that deficiency. And then as you embrace that deficiency, you begin to see, oh yeah, there's something here within me that's insecure. And if you embrace insecurity, what happens is you drop through the insecurity deep into the hara, and you begin to discover a nature that cannot be destroyed. So it's the opposite of insecurity. It's completely secure in the recognition of its own brilliance and light. And so I encourage you to, you know, to look at it two ways. You know, just like I said with Justina, we want Tom to see Tom's brilliance. And we want Tom to embrace the insecurity. And then also, in a healthy egoic manner, just like relationship is a healthy thing for all of us to be involved with, you sharing, Tom, is also a healthy thing. It's a healthy thing. And so if your friends ask, then you share. If they don't ask, don't share. But if you're finding like something within you that's like, I would like to share, then find an avenue to share. And it's one of the reasons why, you know, the internet's become so popular, is because, like, we can all find a group where we can share, where we can be a bright light. You know, I tell this story often. Is I was teaching in San Francisco once, and outside the place I was teaching, there was, you know, like 10 people with 10, you know, dogs. What are they called? 10 wiener dogs. You know, I was like, what? Why is there 10 wiener dogs in this little park here? Because there's a meetup group for that. There's a place for people who love wiener dogs. They can all come together and share the beauty and the radiance of their little, you know, dachshunds, you know, their little wiener dogs. Be like, this is my dog. I love him so much, you know, and they all get together in the park and they share and they're happy to share. But, you know, like not everyone's interested in, you know, wiener dogs. You know, it's the same way with our friends. Like they're not all interested in our spirituality. And so, you know, like I said, like I never share my spiritual teachings with my friends. Occasionally they ask, and when they do, you know, I meet with them and I'll speak with them. But I'm also really empathetic with them, so I'm feeling into them and I'm noticing, you know, when is their cup full, and right before the cup's full, I stop talking. Because if I give them too much, then they'll become like, you know, irritated with me. And so I make sure you know, I don't fill them, I don't overflow them. Now, when people come on retreat, we're all going to be overflowing with divinity, myself included. But, you know, if we're just buddies or you're my neighbor and we're hanging out, I'm not going to give you a big dose of spirituality, you know, because then it becomes like you know, the proselytizing Christians or whatever. It's like, God, okay, I heard enough, you know, about Jesus, one and only Savior. Can you get out? Can you get off my, you know, my front doorstep, you know? So anyways, good to see you, Tom. Okay. Let's see, a lot of questions tonight. Okay, let's hear from Mark. Mark, are you here?
Hey, Craig. Hey, everybody.
Hey, Mark, good to see you.
Good to see you. I guess I don't know, need some words of encouragement tonight because, you know, it's really hard for me, I would imagine for most people, to stay open, right? Like all of the time. And when I come here with you and you give us some guidance in the beginning or do your meditations, you know, it's relatively easy for me to get into that space. And
Yeah.
sometimes in my own
Tell
practice.
me, so tell me why, Mark. Why is it hard to be open?
I don't know. It's like, you know, it almost seems like unconscious sometimes when the ego kind of like comes
Sure.
back.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I might be engaged in conversation or in relationship or work, and all of a sudden it's like I find myself like I've fallen asleep and I'm in this like ego land that can
Yeah.
sometimes be like tormenting, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. And so it's important to map the ego. And so say you're just sitting and you're hanging out with a friend and you just meditated, so you're super open. And then they start to talk in a way, or their tone shifts, or they do something, and you notice yourself beginning to shut down. It's important to map, well, why does my ego shut down? Like why, when, where, how? And then a great question is like, is it necessary? Like, do I need to shut down? Do I need to shut down? And so we're bringing this, what you're calling unconscious quality or sleepy quality of ego, or habitual quality of ego. Let's bring it into the light. And so I invite everyone to sit with this question like, well, why does my ego shut down? When does it shut down? With who does it shut down? When does it stay open? Oh, it stays open at satsang. Like, why is that? Like, what's different in this moment than if I'm talking to, you know, whoever? And so it's important to, you know, like in the realm of psychology or in the realm of Buddhism, you know, these two fields, they tend to study the mind. They say, well, why does the ego behave the way it does? And it's a great question. Is when does my ego contract? And normally it contracts when, like the first two questions, when we're feeling deficient, when we're feeling scared, when we're feeling attacked, when we feel like we need to attack. That's a good one. I have to shut down first, and then I'm going to start attacking. When we're clinging, that's kind of like being deficient. When we're anxious. And so a great way to retrain ourselves is just ask a question like, can I be open with this? Can I be open with this? I can remember the first time I had a partner, and she was just really attacking me, like we were having a big fight, and she was just really coming at me, with all kinds of words and attacks, and telling me what a terrible guy I was or something. And I noticed myself beginning to shut down, and I just stopped and said, like, oh wait, do I have to shut down? I'm like, oh no, I don't have to shut down. I'm like, I know this person, I love her. She's telling me I'm no good, but can I be open with someone telling me that I'm no good? And very quickly I discovered, oh yeah, like I could be quite open. I could be quite open with someone telling me I'm wrong. And of course, we all think it's like, I can be open with someone telling me I'm right. Well, why is that? Oh, I feel safe. Okay. So can I find safety within my own self? And so that means, can I connect with my strength? Can I connect with my strength? And as you connect with your strength, with your own strength, your Buddha nature is like, oh yeah, I can be open with someone attacking me or calling me wrong, or I could be open in traffic. I could be open when I'm not feeling comfortable. If we're going to get the vaccine, it's like, can I be open when they're coming at me with a big needle? It's like, can I be open with this? Like, I've told this story a couple of times, but there's been 3 times when I've had to sit with my eyes wide open while an eye doctor stuck a needle into my eye. I want everyone to just notice, like, what happens in your body. They just say that. A needle going into your eye. So it went right into the place where you could see. So I could see it going in. And I could begin to feel the clench in the gut. But, there was no choice. The doctor was like, don't move. And, and I just took it up and I said, okay, I'm not going to move. And I'm going to stay open. I'm just going to stay open. So I had a piece of metal stuck into my eye. I've had metal in my eye. So 3 times they had to numb my eye. But I think, I can't tell you how many times they had to, like go pick something out of my eyeball. One time the lady said, I'm going to get out a mini drill and drill into your eye. It's like, oh, wow. And again, it's like, can I breathe? Can I feel? Can I be open? So again, this is retraining the mind to stay open. So, just with nature being within us, we have the fight or flight, consciousness within us. And, I can remember it was in science class or some biology class, and we were looking at a microscope, and there was a little amoeba or something, floating around. And the teacher just took like a little needle and just went like to poke at the amoeba, and it just started to kind of shift its body, just gently move away. And it was basically just displaying what a contraction is. It's like, I don't want to be poked. I don't feel safe. I need to shut down. I need to guard. I need to run away. And again, like, that makes sense. A big needle's coming at you, your little amoeba. But part of being conscious is really asking, like, who am I? Who is Mark? Does Mark need to shut down? Like, no. Like, why would Mark ever need to shut down? Why would any of us ever need to shut down? Like, shutting down, it doesn't protect us. So the ego unconsciously thinks if I shut down, I'm protecting myself. But really what happens when you shut down, you're closing yourself off to your own intelligence. Like if you shut down in your heart, you can't hear the voice of the heart anymore. You shut down in the mind, you can't see clearly. You shut down in the belly, you're not connected to your strength or your Buddha nature. And so it's a great question, like, can I be open always? And so I'm going to challenge you, Mark, just to sit with that question. Be like, can I be open always? And right away, the ego will say, no, I can't be open in this situation because someone's poking a needle in my eye. Like, I can't be open with that. It's like, what if I shut down? Like, does that actually protect me? No, needle's still going to go in. It's still going to go in. And so, again, it's just important to investigate the ego. And I like to call the ego's bluff, So if it's saying, okay, I need to be closed down here. Well, why? Why? What does it do for me? Am I actually protected? Am I actually protected? And the ego sometimes will say, well, if I shut down, I'll feel less. And there's a truth to that. You'll feel less. But then you also suffer because you live, behind the prison, you live in the prison cell of the ego. But when you open, you have to be courageous enough to feel more. And begin to ask questions like, do feelings kill me? Do they harm me? No. Like if you stay open, you might feel more pain in the world, but you're also going to feel more beauty, more joy, more spaciousness, more radiance. And so anyways, was that helpful in any way, Mark?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Thank you.
Do you have a habitual way that you shut down, or is there a habitual like circumstance that you just shut down in, or is it just generally speaking?
It's just generally speaking, and I think lately it's kind of like what you were talking about before, like wanting to connect with others.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden all my stuff comes up, the wounded inner child and all my shadow stuff just comes up in the presence of wanting to connect,
Yeah. And so can you be open with that? And can you forgive yourself for being human? And that's like one of the things, like I saw that one time I was really open and I made a big fool of myself and I started to shut down. But then I asked, should I abandon myself in this moment? Like I felt rejection from others. I don't need to reject myself now. Can I stay open and love myself, my own humanity, despite being, I'll just say this, an idiot, because I would just be like, and I'm like, okay, I just said the wrong thing and I act like an idiot and a fool. But I don't need to judge myself. I don't need to shut down. Can I be open with the one who, said the wrong thing? Can I be open with the inner child? Can I be open with the one who's hurting? Can I stay open? And I want everyone to hear this because this is a radical way of living. And your life will change immensely if you can be open just with your own self, with all of yourself. Because what happens is like Mark was describing, if we open up and then we share like an aspect of ourselves and it comes out in a messy way, and then if we shut down, what we're doing is we are abandoning our own inner child or our own self, our own egoic self. When you abandon yourself, well, you'll suffer greatly. The shadow will develop, the deficiency thing will begin to take place or take root more fully, like we were speaking about in the beginning. But if you open to yourself and you allow all the silliness of being human to come forward and you see it, you meet it with love, then there's a real chance for growth, for compassion, for healing, even if it takes place in a messy way. And so being open, the fear with being open is like, well, if I'm really open, they could come, I could be messy. It's like, oh yeah, like awakening is messy. Being human is messy. And if we're honest about that mess and we embrace it, the mess starts to heal and integrate very quickly. But if we deny the mess or act like the mess is bad or wrong or shouldn't be here, if we judge ourselves for being human, it's like, then we start to develop all kinds of neurotic, qualities and behaviors. So anyways, thanks for sharing, Mark. Yeah, good to see you. Yeah. All right. Who's here? Is it Melanie?
Hello?
Hi.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
So for me, it's pretty vulnerable to come forward, and there would be a lot of things that I would have questions about, but the main thing I'm struggling with is complete loss of myself and disorientation, and that has been going on for years. It started after a 1.5-year process, which was an awakening, and with this awakening, my whole personality realigned and changed, and I went through this process alone. There were a lot of things going on regarding my lifestyle. Many energetic experiences. To this day, I don't know if a kundalini awakening happened or not.
Yeah.
And after 1.5 years, I started to spiral down. So, and since then, I have become completely dysfunctional, and I then found out I'm suffering from complex trauma, and it's going together with, I know that I have been probably born highly sensitive and empathic, and probably also kind of psychic, and I never felt like I fit into this world. I felt like an alien always. I was somehow different, not egoically different, but I felt I lacked the attunement and mirror, and only now I found out how dysfunctional my family upbringing was. I was an only child, so no one told me.
Yeah.
And I've been struggling with mental health issues from my youth on, like depression, anxiety, eating disorders, and it went away over certain periods of time, and then it reached the climax, when a complete change occurred and the 1.5-year process unfolded. And after that, I literally spiraled down into hell. So by now, nothing in my life makes sense anymore. I lost everything. I wasn't able to keep a job in the past years. I have no foundation whatsoever. I lost all friends. Nothing makes sense anymore. And I feel like I'm merged with everything. I don't know where above, below, right, left, forward, backward is anymore. And I have no orientation whatsoever. There are a lot of questions like, how do these things go together? Healthy ego development. Who am I really as an individual? And I don't really even know where to start. And I sought so much support in the classical health system. And I mean, certainly some things I couldn't apply or receive, but all in all, I went out every time worse than before. And so now I'm standing here and I'm practically at the abyss, and I have no idea how, what the hell in this constant overwhelm shall I do? I don't understand it.
Okay. Yeah. So so let's talk about this. So basically, what you're describing is just a classical split in these two aspects of self. is, in a sense, you woke up to your absolute nature. It's just vast, it's spacious, it's free, it's ungrounded. And then and so that's one thing. The people just wake up to that. It can be quite shocking. It can be quite overwhelming. It can be like, what is going on here? I don't even feel the earth anymore. And so that's a huge realization to go through, to live through. And, to be awake in this way, it's nice if you have a car that works. A car being a vehicle, vehicle in this sense of speaking about our body. So if our body and our ego, it's like, if it doesn't work, if it's all mixed up, there's not gas in the gas tank, if it's missing an engine, or if the engine, the parts of the engine are all, taken apart, the car is not going to go anywhere. And so you have two different things going on, as you have this awakening to the absolute, which is enough for, any sane human being just to try to deal with. It's like, oh my God, like that's a huge experience. But the car that you're driving in, what you're describing, if you have complex PTSD or complex trauma, basically you're saying this car doesn't work and it needs some support. And so when we're like that, it can be like, I live out here like on the edge of the desert, and say if I drive out my car out in the middle of the desert, the car breaks down, I'm going to feel vast, spacious, and free. But I'm going to be in the middle of nowhere. I'm going to start to get thirsty. And I'm not going to be able to function. And so we need to get the car working. And so we want to get you good, healthy psychological support. But the problem with psychological support is if the people you're working with, if they don't understand your spiritual experience, they're going to misdiagnose you. They're probably going to put you on all kinds of meds and stuff that may be helpful, may not be helpful, may aggravate the symptoms. And so you need some community, you need some support. And so it's going to be important for you to have a teacher and a sangha and others to speak to, in a sense to kind of help get some ground under your feet, because that's what you need. And so, the first thing would be to get grounded, to find some people you trust that you could work with, someone who understands your experience. And then just to look at, well, what do I need to do here? And so, there's three things. You need to get grounded, you need to heal the ego, and then you need to learn how to navigate, this new shift in perspective. By navigate, I mean just to function in this greater sense of spirituality. Now, in regards to all the psychic stuff and the phenomena, because you already have so much going on, I'm going to encourage you just to, just kind of ignore the psychic stuff. And so if you're seeing numbers and you're, hearing voices and that kind of stuff, or seeing ascended masters, just gently ignore it all. Ignore it all and get your feet on planet Earth and just look at, well, what do you need here? We need to heal the psyche so we can function in a reasonable way. And, one of the things that if we're going through intense psychological stuff, it can be very helpful to either have a job working in a physical manner, like working on a farm, working in a garden, doing landscaping, working with our hands or our body, and just having a real basic job, where we're planting vegetables or weeding, or, again, like I was going through a lot of stuff. My teacher would just tell me, hey, Craig, I want to have you dig, post holes, for fencing. So he just give me a post hole digger and just sit me out in his yard for 8 hours, 40 hours a week, just digging. That's all I do is just dig. And all this kind of psychological stuff would be emptying out of me. Psychic realms would be coming. And it's like, what am I doing? I'm just digging. I'm feeling my feet here on planet Earth. And then I'd go talk to him. Say, hey, I'm losing my mind a little bit here. I'm a little bit nutty here, and, he would just get me grounded. And so it's helpful to talk to someone who's sane and who has faith in your divinity, who can see your divinity and support you in growing in that, but in a grounded way. In a grounded way. So getting grounded and working on healing. So you brought up something interesting. You said, well, when I went to, when I worked with the mental health individuals, things began to get worse. And it's important to clarify that of, like with a lot of people, they come and they see me and, we start facing the shadow. As you face the shadow, as you look into the unconscious, things are going to get worse. But I like to say they get worse temporarily before they get better. And that tends to be how healing happens is, if you go see a therapist and you have complex trauma, you're going to bring up a lot of stuff. And that may happen once, that may happen 8 sessions, it may happen for 4 years, where you're bringing up a lot of stuff, you're vomiting it out, it's emptying it out, it's detoxing out of you. It seems like it's getting more messy. But then eventually you start feeling more and more lighter, more and more grounded, more and more emotionally stable. And so, it's important to clarify that, the healing journey oftentimes is like that. It gets more messy before it gets better. So that's one of the reasons. Or if you just get the type of support where the person doesn't understand you, then it can get messy, but it's messy because there's a misunderstanding, not because they're doing something wrong or there's something wrong with you. It's just, they're not trained in a way to be able to deal with someone who's awoken to the absolute, who also has complex trauma or PTSD. One thing I can tell you with your body, it can be quite helpful to do a program. When we have complex trauma, it can be very helpful to invest in a program, like a somatic healing based program that you can do on your own. Like a program like the iRest program by Dr. Richard Miller. And basically, it's a program. It's just a series of meditations and visualizations, just calming the entire nervous system down and helping it to get grounded. So the biggest thing that the body needs and the psyche needs when we have complex trauma is we need to feel safe. We need to feel safe here on planet Earth. And so the iRest program is a good one. I'm sure there's a number of different, somatic experiencing programs. There's 1,000,001, like videos on healing on YouTube. But, sometimes if you just invest in a program and stick to it, it can be helpful. And to give yourself something to do to calm and to relax the nervous system. Because if the nervous system is, basically if it's freaking out, if it's on the edge of panic or fear or anxiety, it's hard to be like, it's like driving a car where the RPMs are just revved, up to 5, 6, 7,000. It feels like the engine's going to explode. And it's like, it's hard to think clearly when it's like that. I mean, me and the family, we were driving down the road today, and this car pulled out alongside of us. And it was either a young driver or a new driver. Someone just didn't know what they were doing. They like put it in the wrong gear and they just revved the motor just as loud as it could go. And the thing sounded like it was, just going to explode. But it was, and I was going like 65 and it was going like 20. We just looked at it like, that's crazy what's going on in that car. And when we have trauma, our nervous systems are so revved up that we can't think clearly, we can't see clearly. And so there's a feeling of oftentimes of craziness or just wildness or just intense energy. And what we need to do is we need to calm that whole nervous system down so that we can think clearly and see clearly and actually heal and integrate and begin to function again. So anyways, so there's all kinds of support. You're welcome to, if you're having Kundalini stuff, like I'm seeing in the chat, you're welcome to come to the Kundalini group on Fridays. That could be helpful. It could be helpful to connect with the Kundalini support group Facebook page and start talking with other members of the Sangha, with other people who are going through real intense experiences of huge energetics and stepping into the absolute, and also having trauma. It can be nice just to be around other people who've been through this or who are going through this, so there's less of a feeling of aloneness and like I'm going crazy here. When you start to see other human beings who are navigating it, it's like, oh, okay, we're in this together and this is normal. And I could go on and on, but there is this intersection where we have Kundalini that's real revved up, and then we have trauma that's feels overwhelmed, and then we get blasted into a state of the absolute. Can kind of be the perfect storm. But behind it all, I'm going to invite you to trust that there's a reason for all of this. That ultimately what God's inviting for you is for you to realize your goddess nature. And so through a process like this, like when we have complex trauma, we're invited to learn unconditional love, unconditional strength, and unconditional clarity. Now, it may seem overwhelming, and there's truth to that. It's overwhelming to the ego. But also I want to point out, like when you just spoke to me a moment ago, you were very clear. You directly spoke about what your experience was. There was a gentleness in your voice. And so right there, you have clarity. You have this gentle love. And you have this strength that you've been through this. Like you said, last year and a half has been real tough. But there's something here that's outliving it all. There's something here that's holding space for it all. There's something here that we're inviting to be compassionate to it all. And so we want to acknowledge these qualities. That, oh, true nature is here. Our divinity is here right now. It's important to acknowledge that it's taking place right here, right now. Sometimes when we're free falling through space, we're just, we're sitting there screaming, there's no parachute, there's no parachute, there's no parachute. But we forget to realize, yeah, but there's also no ground. And I'm okay. I'm okay. I'm witnessing it all. I'm okay. And for most of us, it's very easy to have faith in like how hard life is. But for very few people, it's, do they have faith, in their divinity and their unconditionally loving nature and the spaciousness of their mind and the quiet strength that's always here. And so I encourage you to have faith in your divinity as well. So you acknowledge the human self is falling apart, but there's also something here that's quite awake. And to begin to claim that. Begin to claim it and even to smile like, wow, God's really putting me through the ringer here. And you take a deep breath, but you say, but I'm okay. And you breathe a sense of okayness throughout your nervous system to help calm that whole thing down. So anyways, good to see you. Yeah, thanks for speaking up. Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm looking at the time. I have still a lot more questions. Richard, do you have a question for us?
Yes. What's everybody? Hi there. Good to see you.
Yeah.
Gone for about 2 to be here. Yeah. Melanie, so much love. What a difficult situation, and complex traumas. A very difficult thing to move through while you're simultaneously going through an awakening process, and just totally hear you. I'm from a very grounded kind of doing that same thing as well, I just want to say, you got this. You got this. Yeah. Okay. Craig, I want to ask today about, first of all, this is very quick. I just want to hear whether or not you've had this experience before. And then I have a question that you can move through in however much time, because it is very late. I had this experience where it was kind of like a non-dual forgiveness, which it's like, how can you forgive that which has never transpired? All is forgiven. How can you forgive that which has never happened? All is forgiven. Nothing's ever happened. All is forgiven. So very, doesn't logically make sense, kind of very non-dually, could be very spiritually bypassy if applied to a specific situation. But that arose spontaneously in a given moment. I was just curious if you experienced anything like that before.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. Excellent. Just wanted
Yeah, just going back to like the person before that asked the question, like when you start to step into the absolute, just the nature of the mind shifts so greatly. That's like the victim, the offender, the happening, not happening, existing, not existing. They all kind of implode. It's like, you can step into a place where it's like there's no real person or human. There's something, there, of course, things happen, and things don't happen. And who's the cause of it, and who am I, and who are they? And, there's just a oneness in it all. And it just feels like we're all eating each other and being fed by each other and loving each other. And, sometimes I'll look at my compost pile and be like, what's happening here on this planet? It's like, forgive this, they forgive me, I forgive them, who forgives who, what forgives what, and it all just kind of doesn't even make sense, from some level of perspective. But if you get rooted in your humanity, it could be like, they really hurt me, or I really hurt them. Wow. Well, then again, you can ask, well, what am I and what are they? And does it come from the same root? And, so anyways, yeah, of course I've had that experience. Yeah. So you said you had a question in there somewhere?
So first of all, thank you. And so the question has to do with, I'm curious at your, at the level of realization that you're currently kind of occupying. And I'm also curious about the experience of the other teachers that you affiliate with and this kind of thing. There's lots of people who are like pretty awake. They're not identified with the body mind any longer, but still ongoing shenanigans, whether in their personal lives or more importantly in their spiritual communities. So it's like, okay, you can have like a significant level of realization and still be acting out shenanigans. And so there's a need somehow to continue to like cooperate with the process, for the small self to cooperate with the larger self or something like that. Even though those people could step back and say, well, I'm not what smaller self, right? This kind of thing. And that would be true to their direct experience, but also true that they're acting out shenanigans, right? And so I'm curious at your kind of level and the other teachers that you affiliate with that are kind of abiding at a similar level, what's the experience there in regards to the small self continuing to cooperate with the larger self, even though you're the larger self and that's an abiding experience kind of thing? I'm just curious about the subtlety of that and kind of the direct experience of it. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so that's actually a pretty big question, but let's see if I can make that simple in any way. So one of the things that I find great power in and great freedom in is awakening to evolution and just allowing the force of evolution to flow through this body, this mind, this egoic personality, this soul. And so a number of years ago, I just stopped judging my human self in any way. And in that lack of judgment, there was this freedom just to be a human being and to grow as a human being. Just to grow, like the way, like, I have some kale seeds. I'm going to go put them out in my garden. It starts warming up, and I'm going to water them, and they're going to start growing. And so human beings, like, we need time to grow. And so, like, when I see another teacher get involved in shenanigans, I see my own self. I see my animal nature in them. I don't judge any teacher because everything I see in them, I can find in myself, in this human self. Like, this human self has everything in it. It has the worst aspects of human nature and the highest aspects of human nature. And there's a freedom when you know that. Like, when you, like, I don't think I'm not capable of anything. Like, this human body is capable of getting in all kinds of trouble and shenanigans. It's also capable of growing. It is growing. Even if I get into trouble with shenanigans, I'll know that I will outgrow that experience. Like, I'll get into the mess and I'll say, oh, I'm in a mess. This mess is not what I want. Like I was speaking with, I think with Tom, with Justina, it's whenever I see ego deficiency, like, that's normally where we get in trouble with shenanigans, is there's an ego deficiency there. And so it simply means there's something within me that wants to be liberated, that wants to be connected with love, that wants to be connected with truth. That's all it means. So if I acknowledge that, and if I freely dive into that stream of evolution and see that this is how God works. Like, God is both vast, absolute, just perfect, primordial essence. But God is also the Shakti that's giving birth to form and growing through form. And there's a freedom in growing through form. If you give yourself permission to grow without resistance. So the biggest way we resist growth is through judging, like, this shouldn't be happening. And Richard, one of the things that will happen is if you can find every aspect of shadow within you, every aspect of darkness, every aspect of shenanigans, and you fully meet it with love, it will make perfect sense to you. Perfect sense. Why every human being on planet Earth is doing whatever the heck they're doing. Whether it's, so maybe makes it a different way. If you can find every aspect of divinity and mastery and absolute, nirvana or whatever, heaven realm, you find the highest within you and the lowest. There's such a freedom in that realization because it springs forth immense compassion for all beings, yourself included, your human self. And when there's, I'll use this word, when there's a ridiculous amount of compassion in your realization, the dividing line or even the preference to be in a holy state or egoic state, it's almost like it gets erased, like this a preference. And there's some like imploding factor that happens between being masterful or being human it's quite paradoxical, and I don't want people to get the wrong idea, but rarely do I ever have the thought, like say I'm having the worst day ever. Um, I'm not thinking that I'm a failure, I made a mistake, this needs to change, I need to fix this. I'd rather be in bliss, or I need to be in bliss, or I need to get up and do my different aspect of self. I'll say this, and this will sound crazy. I'm just as happy to suffer as I am to experience just immense light. And I know that sounds really crazy what I'm saying, but there's some type of implosion that happens through the doorway of humility and compassion, where we stop wanting to be somewhere else. Like if I'm in hell, I'm realizing that this is God evolving in hell. And again, I can say it's like this last year I had is because of things that happened in my family. It's literally the worst year of my life. And if you look at me, I'm smiling, which is a crazy thing. That's brought me to tears. It's brought me to my knees. I've had a crisis of faith and all kinds of, this and that. But, like I wish the pain didn't happen from just a human perspective, but from a divine perspective, it's just like, okay, like this is life. You're on planet Earth. Like this is evolution. This is God evolving. And there's this incarnational quality of just saying yes to incarnating, even if the incarnation, I'm going to use this word, really sucks from a human perspective. And so again, I hope that makes sense in some way, but yeah, I was actually reflecting on this today because it was strange to me that I didn't have any preference to be higher. Of course, no one would prefer to be lower, but if a low state of consciousness overcomes me, I think I'm just in it. And there's some type of courageous embracing of it. Even if I could go into a human place and be like, God, this is really painful. this is no good. But again, I hope this is making sense. There's just something that can shift where there's this aspect of freedom which just shows up as like a yes to whatever circumstance God is putting you in, whatever state of consciousness, whatever, again, whether it's hell or heaven, there's a yes to it. Because there's a faith that there's an intelligence here that's working itself out. That's working itself out. So anyways, hope that was helpful. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's one thing I just, if I can make it really simple, it's when we know everything is within us. Like when you meditate long enough, you can find anything and everything within you. And when you can find everything within you, again, the highest and the lowest, and you're able to sit with it and open to it and embrace it, it's like the quality of mind that judges falls away, and there's just this sense of freedom and compassion that are so beautifully intertwined, and it just gives birth to great love. Great love, and all life makes sense. Like the worst of humanity and the best. It's like, oh yeah, I can find. I see it, all of it. And it goes kind of back to that forgiveness thing you said. It's like oh yeah, it's like the biggest dirtbag that ever lived is right here. And this, holiness, like I feel so much light just flowing right now is here. And it makes sense. It makes sense. Even though it's an utter paradox. So, anyways, okay. All right. I'm going to get in trouble. Send all these questions. I better hurry up. Hi, Craig. How do we accept our own decision to get rid of anger and resentment toward others? How do we accept our own decisions and get rid of anger and resentment? Hannah, meet it all with love. Meet your anger with love. Meet your resentment with love. And one of the ways we do that is you validate your anger first, you validate your resentment, and then you embrace it fully and deeply. As you embrace any feeling, when you feel it fully, it just naturally empties out of you. That's one of the things about being a mammal, is if you feel everything fully, it will unravel out of your nervous system. It won't plague you anymore. Hi, Craig. Let me do 2 more questions, everyone. Just hang in there with me. I understand the nature of expansion and contraction. For weeks, I felt radiant, expanded, clear, enjoying space and exquisite intimacy with life. Today, I woke up feeling totally shattered, terrorized, alone, fearful, abandoned. I've been told that I have an unstable arising, and it surely seems so as I go from extreme spaciousness and clarity to, what feels like a hell zone. My question is, will this instability level out and correct itself? Yes. I'm pretty sure the answer is yes. Usually filled with trust and faith, but I feel quite shaken to my core. Yeah, this is a normal thing in a sense. Melanie brought this up too, that this is a common game that God plays with us, as will blast us into the light, and then with a flip of a light switch, just throw us down into hell, into the unconsciousness of our psyche. And the question is can you witness it all and meet it with love? And as you do so, love and clarity and strength stabilize. That's just kind of how the game works. Yeah. Can you meet it all with love? Can you meet how with love? And then peace and clarity will stabilize. While you're in hell, it's important not to believe your thoughts, not to get carried away with the feelings, but just to work with a mantra like this too shall pass. Kate asks a question, basically saying she's feeling radically overwhelmed with her experience of kundalini. And then, how to deal with all the people around her who are not going through this experience, who don't understand what she's going through. She struggles with having to explain herself to people, then be misunderstood. And so, Kate, the big thing that you need is you need a sangha, you need a group, you need some friends who do know what you're going through, who do understand your experience. Because the path can be quite lonely. And like I was speaking about with Melanie, it's like when you're going through something intense and you feel like no one understands you, we can really spin out into a victim consciousness of like, I'm the only one going through this. No one else understands me, and really struggle. So it's important to have some friends and a good teacher and a support system who do understand you. And just to acknowledge that most of humanity will have no idea what you're going through. Like I felt that way for almost the whole time on the path. Felt like, gosh, it's me and my teacher, no one else understands me. And it felt really lonely for a long period of time. I kept praying for God to send me a best friend or some friends who could understand me. And then at some point I was overwhelmed by understanding. So many people were supportive. And so let's call for some support for Kate and for Melanie. And just inviting love to hold them all, to embrace them while they go through this great difficulty. And so if you're struggling, if anyone out there is struggling, put your name in the hat. And we'll pray for you too, inviting God's grace to pour into your life, to hold you, to embrace you, to support you, to give you the strength to go forward. And so, I think we're going to end there. I'm going to remind everyone about the retreat. We'd love to have you. I want to thank you all for your generous donations and your support. It's so nice to meet with you all in this way. We'll see y'all next time. Good night, everyone. Bye for now.